Welcome back to the channel. This will be my team selection for Game Week 9. Amidst all the Champions League action, there is still a lot more to talk about over the coming days ahead of Friday's deadline, and you can see the clean sheet odds on screen. Arsenal are top once again against Crystal Palace at home after beating Atletico Madrid 4-0 in the Champions League on Tuesday night. Chelsea are second, facing Sunderland also at home, and in fact, the entire top six have home fixtures, which is the same pattern we saw in UCL Fantasy out of matchday 3 in terms of the clean sheet odds. So it includes Newcastle, Wolves, Bournemouth and Leeds, whilst in last place is Sunderland. Despite a solid start to the season, they only have a 13% probability of keeping a clean sheet at Stamford Bridge. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and drop a like on this video, subscribe to my channel, and also the notification bell so always up to date on my content for both FPL and UCL Fantasy. Let's get this video to over 150 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards new goals like 37,000 subscribers. Check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the Championship, for likes to my videos, prior to comments, amongst many other perks. My Discord server, the FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. If you have seen my previous team selection podcast, you'll know I'll start off with a game week review, and I have to say, it has been a very solid sort of couple of weeks for me, and I'm building some momentum. I started Dubravka over Robert Sanchez, so despite Chelsea keeping a clean sheet in the early kickoff on Saturday against Nottingham Forest, Robert Sanchez was booked towards the end of the game, whilst Dubravka delivered 9 points. He got 4 saves, also got a clean sheet and 2 bonus points, so that was a healthy 9-pointer for Martin Dubravka, and he is the best 4 million goalkeeper by some distance, and Darlow could be dropped very soon for the returning Perry, who is already in the squad for Leeds United, but it's only a matter of time before he becomes the number 1 goalkeeper once again. In my defensive line, it was quite mixed bag, so Pedro Porro and Lacroix both blanked and delivered 1-pointers, and Aston Villa beat Tottenham Hotspur 2-1, despite Tottenham taking the lead, and Porro has been quite underwhelming as an FPL asset. I think most Spurs players at this point are a sell, but against Everton, there is a case to maybe hold on to them for one more week, but they are near the bottom of the FDR, the fixture difficulty rating, up until Game Week 13, whilst Arsenal are near the top alongside Chelsea, and Gabriel delivered another 12-pointer. He got maximum bonus points, a clean sheet, and an assist for Trossard's winning goal against Fulham, as Arsenal sit top of the Premier League table, and Lacroix featured in a 3-3 thriller against Bournemouth, and ultimately, you have to say with Crystal Palace, they did make a great comeback because they were 2-0 down at one stage, but Lacroix has been a very underwhelming asset as well. He's not even getting ball recoveries and defensive contributions here in Fantasy Premier League, which is quite disappointing. But in the midfield, it was actually very solid on the whole. Semenyo was the worst performer with 4 points. He got an assist and a yellow card, and there was a lot of contention about the first assist not being awarded for Krupi Jr. And Ndai also got 4 points, to be fair, but that was courtesy of DEFCON, so I take that as a massive win. He was brilliant against Man City and created a huge opportunity for Beto, who really should have scored. It was a tap-in, and he was hitting the post himself out of frustration because he knew he had missed a gilt-edged opportunity for the Toffees. But Ndai is consistent, he's on penalties, scores plenty of goals in the midfield, offers terrific value at 6.5 million, and gets defensive contribution points on a regular basis. And both Cody Gakpo and Bruno Fernandes scored on Sunday in that massive clash between Liverpool and Man United, as the Red Devils handed Liverpool their 4th consecutive loss across all competitions. Gakpo scored the equaliser at the time, but the winning goal was assisted by Bruno Fernandes, and was a great header by Harry Maguire, and Fernandes delivered maximum bonus points on that occasion to deliver 8 overall. And in my forward line, it was kind of carried by 2 players here because Joao Pedro has been stinking out the gaff for quite some time with multiple blanks in a row. Erling Haaland scored a quick fire brace, and he has been brilliant for Manchester City this season. And Nick Voltemada has been a great signing for me. I got him in just before Game Week 7. He got 6 points there against Nottingham Forest. I built some team value as a result because I sold Chris Wood, and he's gone down in price yet again overnight to 7.2 million, whilst Voltemada got another 8-pointer in Game Week 8 against Brighton, despite the fact that Newcastle lost 2-1. So I'm very happy with Voltemada and Haaland. I would argue both of them make up 2 of the 3 forwards in a best wildcard squad, which you'll see very soon in that respective video. But then it becomes very open between Joao Pedro, Gyökeres, Bowen and Jean-Philippe Mateta for that final spot. You could also make a strong case for Igor Thiago, who is offering real consistency at this moment in time. And if you want a 4.5 million budget forward, Krupi Jr. is the one. But once Ivanovic is back from his injury, which could be by game week 10 or 11, I think he'll be the main striker for the rest of the season. But if he were to get a long-term injury, Krupi Jr. would be of real interest at such a cheap price tag Now, on my bench, I had Robert Sanchez, who got 5 points, but the rest did blank. That includes Reinders, who was subbed off before 60 minutes, so he only got 1 point in that 2-0 win over Everton, and Konsa blanked once more with only 2 points, and Reinildo Mandava was suspended, but he will now be available for Gameweek 9 against Chelsea away, and you would expect him to start for the Black Cats, despite the fact that Sunderland have done quite well in his absence. So in Gameweek 8, I actually got a decent score in 82, and I've shown real consistency in recent weeks because I got 75 points in Gameweek 6 and 7, so I'm now on a kind of upward trajectory of 3 consecutive green arrows and just outside the top 1 million, so it's real progress considering a disastrous start to the season, particularly between Game Weeks 3 to 5, which was a very poor spell for me, but this is now a good comeback, and it's about building upon this and going to even higher ranks in the future and rising up those mini leagues and the overall standings. But I've now got 2 free transfers because I rolled in Game Week 8, and my squad value is 100.7 million with 0.7 in the bank, so I can't go from Bruno Fernandes to Bukayo Saka just yet. But before I discuss some transfer plans, let me highlight the prices at this moment in time. Dubravka is still 4 million. I'm quite surprised about that, and surely with another return or two, he could rise to 4.1 million at some stage. Pedro Porro is still 5.6, but I think that will drop fairly soon to 5.5 million, his base price from the beginning of the season, and Lacroix is 5.1, and against Arsenal away, I'm not too keen on starting him, and Gabriel recently went up to 6.4 million. He's by far the most expensive defender in the game right now, and in the Champions League, he scored and assisted against Atletico Madrid and was narrowly pipped to the Player of the Match award by Victor Gyökeres, who scored a brace for the Gunners. Bruno Fernandes went down in price to 8.9 million on Saturday night, I believe, whilst Reinders also went down in price over the last week to 5.7 million. His price has fluctuated throughout the season, with many managers bringing him in, but at this stage, I think a lot of FPL managers will sell the Dutchman, and ultimately, I talked about this in my Gameweek 7 transfer tips. I believe most Man City assets, bar Erling Haaland, RSL. That includes Phil Foden, who I talked about in the recent transfer tips only yesterday, and I think Reinders, despite not being a priority sell because of his price tag, he is still not the best at 5.7 million and below. Cody Gakpo is still at 7.5 million himself, whilst Semenyo is 8 million, but he was quite disappointing, of course, in Gameweek 8, and Ndiaye has been very stable at 6.5 million. He has gone under the radar because of Jack Grealish and other assets at a similar price tag, and Joao Pedro is still one of the highest owned players in the game, but his ownership has still dropped dramatically, and the price tag is now back to his base kind of price from the beginning of the season at 7.5 million. Erling Haaland, though, is 14.7, and Voltemada is 7.4, so he has gained me a lot of team value since I bought him in, and Robert Sanchez is 4.9 million on my bench, and you've also got Konsa at 4.5 and Reinildo Mandava at 4 million, and ultimately I don't see him as a priority change, and I could just keep him as my 5th defender and to always sit 3rd on my bench. But let's discuss some transfer plans to bolster my Gameweek 9 prospects with 2 available moves, and I think Cody Gakpo to Sarr is still on the cards there for the long term, but this is something I'd rather do in Gameweek 10 because Crystal Palace face Arsenal away on Sunday, and I would rather go for Enzo Fernandez this week if he's available. So if we see the Argentine start against Ajax on Wednesday night, I'm quite keen on buying Enzo Fernandez to cover that Chelsea midfield and attack, but at the same time, Liam Delap could be back fairly soon, which people would probably point towards Joao Pedro being a worse asset as a result, but I think that will actually benefit him. He works better with a striker, and also when he plays with Cole Palmer, you see the best of Joao Pedro, and playing as the attacking midfielder, I think Joao Pedro has a better chance of FPL returns compared to when he plays up front. So it could be Enzo Fernandez, who is significantly impacted by Delap's return as he plays in a deeper position to start with, but Ismaila Sarr is my favourite 6-point family midfielder that I don't own in the long term. I've already got Ndiaye, who I'm quite happy with, but to replace Cody Gakpo, who, by the way, I'd be more keen on selling if he starts against Frankfurt in the Champions League on Wednesday night as well. So once we have that kind of bits of information, that will kind of maybe push me towards certain transfers more so, and it gives me more information to work with, and by Friday you will see my final transfers. But I am quite open to selling Gakpo anyway, despite goals in the last 2 Premier League matches against Chelsea and Manchester United. The next transfer I'm looking at is Bruno Fernandes to Saka, but I don't see this as a massive upgrade in Gameweek 8, and even in the previous game week, when Arsenal played against Fulham, Saka delivered 7 points, but I didn't have the feeling that I had to sell Bruno Fernandes despite that tough trip to Liverpool away, and Fernandes outscored him by a solitary point with the maximum bonus and the crucial assist to win Man United that particular game. But Saka is now 10 million in price, and I do want to get him fairly soon. He is playing extremely well. You would argue that against Atletico he was a bit more quiet and he didn't score or assist in that 4-0 win, but the goals will be spread in that Arsenal team. But Saka will be the most consistent attacker, that's for sure. And the other moves will be in my defensive line. So Konsa will make way to one of Marcus Senesi, who is a DEFCON machine, or I could go for Dan Burn and cover that Newcastle defence, and they've got better fixtures overall. So I'm quite keen on one of Dan Burn or Senesi for Konsa this week. That's the most likely transfer, and with the others I discussed in the midfield, that's probably going to be pushed towards Game Week 10, unless Enzo Fernandez starts, or we get a lot of confidence that he's going to get the nod against Sunderland over the weekend, and that's where I can buy Enzo Fernandez in Game Week 8 and replace Cody Gakpo, and that gives me even more money in the bank to upgrade my defensive line, and that's where I could go for Cucurella or Reece James to cover Chelsea defensively. I'm also quite keen on their assets. I bought Malo Gusto in UCL Fantasy, and in FPL, I'm also quite open to buying one of Chalobah, Gusto, or Reece James, especially if I wildcard in Game Week 13. So my original plan was to wildcard in Game Week 8 or 9, but I felt my team was strong enough and competitive that I didn't need to play the wildcard, and so far that decision has paid off. So after considering all of these possible transfers and also the repercussions of the Champions League, this is my provisional Game Week 9 team selection for the Friday deadline. Robert Sanchez will be my starting goalkeeper against Sunderland at home. My alternative is Dubravka, who has a decent fixture on paper against Wolves away, but I do fancy Chelsea a little bit more for the clean sheet. And in my defensive line, I've got Pedro Porro, Burn, and Gabriel. And a key reason why I'd probably be less keen on one of Chalobah, Gusto, or James compared to Burn/Senesi is because I've already got Sanchez to cover that Chelsea defence, and I think doubling up isn't worthwhile. I also kind of blocks me from Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, or Palmer in the future, as I've already got Joao Pedro up front. I'm not immune or allergic to selling Joao Pedro, by the way, but I feel with his fixtures coming up and Delap returning fairly soon, that could actually bolster his chances of FPL returns. But Pedro Porro against Everton away, I'm happy to keep for one more week. It does mean a clash in my starting 11, which you'll see in the midfield, but I think selling Porro to someone like Senesi as well, and having Burn and Senesi partnering Gabriel in most game weeks is probably the best way to go about things, and I could see that happening by game week 11 or 12, but I don't want to focus my transfers too much on defenders before I wildcard by the time we get to game week 13. That's the most likely stage where I'll activate that chip, so I want to maximize other windows and positions, but I do see Pedro Porro as a sell and a bit of a cash cow to give me more funds to make those incremental upgrades in the forward line and midfield. Dan Burn against Fulham at home is ranked quite highly in terms of the clean sheet odds, and Newcastle beat Benfica 3-0, and Dan Burn delivered 8 points in UCL Fantasy. He's very good for ball recoveries in that game, and in terms of DEFCON, he can get it on the odd occasion, and he did so against Brighton in Game Week 8. And Gabriel's also doing it quite consistently, more so than he did last season, which is great to see, and Gabriel is the best defender in Fantasy Premier League right now. It won't be easy against Crystal Palace on Sunday, and the Gunners might struggle, but I think Gabriel will still be a regular starter in my FPL team. I don't think I'll ever bench him from this point until the end of the season. In the midfield, I've got Bruno Fernandes, Gakpo, Semenyo, and Ndai. That is a very strong midfield, but it could still be bettered with the likes of Saka, Enzo Fernandez, and Ismail Assar, and I do like Bruno Fernandes against Brighton. He has a great record against the Seagulls, and if Gakpo is benched in the Champions League, I don't mind keeping him against Brentford. I just think he's not going to play 3 games in a week, and that's why the Champions League could be very important when it comes to my final decision on Cody Gakpo and whether I sell him this week or in Game Week 10 instead. And Antoine Semenyo would have been a heavy captaincy option for me if Ange Postecoglou was still at Nottingham Forest, but with Sean Dyche now taken over, there could be an immediate manager bounce, and ultimately it's very difficult to go against Erling Haaland with the armband, considering his form. He scored yet again in Man City's 2-0 win against Villarreal, and Ndai is facing Tottenham, so there you've got the clash, of course, between him and Pedro Porro in my starting 11, and I would favour Ndai in that direct clash there. He's on penalties, he can get DEFCON, and also score plenty of goals from open play, so I think Ndai is the best Toffees asset overall, even over Jack Grealish, who will return and provide Everton a massive boost in that game this weekend. Now, my forward line is still very solid on paper. With Joao Pedro against Sunderland, I don't think it's a good idea to sell him now, but then again, I said that about Salah against Man United and the rest is history, but he will have chances in this game, and over the next couple of weeks, he's going to have more shots because recently he's not even having any attempts whatsoever, and Erling Haaland is still a leading captaincy contender against Aston Villa away. He scored in the Champions League. His record this season is insane. I believe he's already got over 20 goals across all competitions for club and country. His goal scoring stats are ridiculous, and it has to take something special to go away from him for the captaincy. He's the only premium who is offering real consistency in the forward line, and also amongst midfielders. The likes of Salah have dropped off massively this season. Bukayo Saka has been decent in recent weeks, but he's not someone you'd probably want to captain over Erling Haaland. And with Semenyo, I think the kind of biggest advantage or reason to go for him as a captain has been taken away with the dismissal of Ange Postecoglou on Saturday. But Nick Voltemada is decent against Fulham. I wouldn't mind him as a differential captain. I just don't think his ceiling will be as high as the others on this list. In the Champions League, Anthony Gordon has been the standout. He has 4 goals in the Champions League for Newcastle. He's right up there with the top goal scorers in that competition. But in the Premier League, it has been Nick Voltemada time after time again, and he's one of my favourite forwards in FPL right now. On my bench, I've got Dubravka against Wolves away, who isn't a bad option, but I just don't see myself starting him over Robert Sanchez. I've got Reinders first on my bench against Aston Villa away, and if I had enough money, I'd maybe upgrade him to one of Enzo Fernandez or Ismaila Sarr. I'm just a little bit short when it comes to that. He does cost 5.7 million, and ultimately selling prices differentiate from overall value. And I've also got Lacroix away to Arsenal, so buying one of Dan Burn or Senesi bolsters my defensive line this week quite significantly, and Reinildo is back facing Chelsea away. There is even a case to bench boost with this squad. I've still got that chip intact. The only booster I've used so far is the triple captain on Erling Haaland in Gameweek 6 with that massive return against Burnley. And speaking of which, he's going to be my captain in Gameweek 9. It is boring, I am well aware of that, and ultimately I want to go a little bit different with the captaincy. There are opportunities to go against Erling Haaland, but there aren't enough reliable or kind of high upside premiums who are delivering that real consistency or giving you the confidence in captaining them at this moment in time, which is why Erling Haaland is the default captain by choice. It's similar to Mohamed Salah at this stage last year, where you saw the form. He was clearly the best player in the Premier League at that stage, and you just captain him until the form dips quite dramatically. And in the case of Salah, it lasted up until February and March by Gameweek 30, but I think Haaland will do really well over the course of the season. If he stays fit, Man City will be in the title race, and the main reasons will be Erling Haaland and Pep Guardiola. Let me discuss some expected points from the website Fantasy Football Hub as well, and Robert Sanchez is favoured by the algorithm over Martin Dubravka with 4.3 expected points, whilst Dubravka has 3.5. Pedro Porro is at 3.7, and Burn offers 4.4 expected points. I think Senesi is even higher at 4.7, so if I wanted that immediate return, Marcus Senesi might be even better on paper. And Gabriel has 5.8, Fernandes is at 6.1, and Gakpo is still decent at 5.1, but the minutes could be a concern. Antoine Semenyo offers 5.8 predicted points, and Ndai is at 5.2. Nick Voltemada is at 4.7, João Pedro at 5.6, and the highest as always is Erling Haaland with 7.5 expected points, whilst Reinders has 3.8 on my bench, Lacroix has 3.3, and Reinildo has 2.6. But honestly, I don't mind getting rid of the bench boost and just having it out of the way so I can focus on my starting 11 and the other chips which are more important, and we could see even more rotation in the coming weeks, especially in the winter period by the time we get to Gameweeks 13 and 15. So I think using the bench boost in Gameweek 8 or 9, I've been talking about that recently, is the play. Gameweek 8 has already gone by, and I never really thought of it as a possibility for my setup, but I'm quite open to deploying the chip in Gameweek 9. That's something I'll discuss during the deadline stream, and I wouldn't rule it out definitively. And if I had wildcarded in Gameweek 8, maybe I would have had a stronger bench on paper for this upcoming deadline, but that hasn't been the case, and the wildcard could be saved for Gameweek 13. That is my current plan. It is subject to change, and I'm quite open-minded. I don't want to lock myself into something and kind of be very rigid and stubborn in my approach, but that is going to be the most likely scenario when it comes to the wildcard, and that could also influence when I free hit and bench boost for the first half of the season. As covered in the transfer section earlier in this video, it's between Marcus Senesi or Dan Burn to replace Konso, who's been a terrible FPL asset from the beginning, and that will bolster my defensive line so I can bench Lacroix against Arsenal away in Gameweek 9. The expected points would be higher with Marcus Senesi compared to Lacroix and Dan Burn, but not by much to be fair, and ultimately Senesi does have some tough fixtures over the next 3, which includes Aston Villa and Man City away. But if we visualize Game Week 10 as well, which you can do with websites like this, FPL.team is a great resource for Fantasy Premier League. Senesi would be playing Man City away in Game Week 10, so by that stage I can just start Lacroix, but I do have Pedro Porro at home to Chelsea as well, so that isn't ideal. I could start Reinildo against Everton at home, but I've also got Ndai in the same setup, so that'll be another clash between Ndai and one of my defenders. So that's something I need to think about. I would be happy with the rest of my setup. Even Semenyo against Man City away, he is fixture proof and he has done well against the Citizens in recent campaigns, and the rest is also quite solid. Gakpo at home to Aston Villa, if he starts, he has a great record at Anfield, and with Gabriel, he is fixture proof and he's got Burnley away. The only kind of risk there is with rotation, with Hincapié now available, and he needs some minutes as well. But my goalkeepers look quite poor, with Sanchez facing Tottenham away and Dubravka against Arsenal at home. I've got Reinders against Bournemouth at home. I could maybe start him, but ultimately things aren't entirely clear for Game Week 10, and by that stage it will look kind of closer to a wild card being necessary compared to Game Week 9, where I still think it's not really actually mandatory or that I need to pull the trigger to be competitive and get some rank rises. I'm still quite confident in my Game Week 9 setup, but ultimately I think Dan Burn over Senesi is the most likely scenario because it also gives me a decent fixture, or at least better than Man City away compared to Senesi. So I can play Burn against West Ham away and then start him over Enilo Mandava, and then things look very solid in the long term, and then I can still focus my efforts with 2 free transfers on bolstering other positions. That could also include Pedro Porro, but ideally it would be in the midfield where I sell one of Bruno Fernandes or Gakpo, possibly even both, to the likes of Saka, who is the main priority, and one of Sarr or Enzo Fernandez in the midfield. They're my favourite options at 6.5 million alongside Ndai, and they're all worth including on the wildcard or with your transfers. In FPL Challenge, I produced 65 points in Game Week 8 and it was a great start, but towards the end it kind of faltered with Mohamed Salah and Bowen letting me down. And I also had Antoine Semenyo, who got me 4 points, but Erling Haaland did the business as my captain. I also had Gabriel and some good options across the board like Rufs in goal. But for the upcoming deadline, the challenge is called Iconic. So players who have been at the club for 5+ seasons earn double points, 1 player per club, and an unlimited budget. Once again, I've gone for Pope in goal against Fulham, with James facing Sunderland, Mohamed Salah and Bruno Fernandes facing Brentford and Brighton respectively, Erling Haaland against Aston Villa away, and Jarrod Bowen against Leeds. I'll probably change the captain in FPL Challenge, and I'll discuss this in the upcoming deadline stream on Friday, where I will lock in my final FPL and FPL Challenge squads, provide you injury updates, team news, all the graphics and an ultimate guide with the clean sheet odds, the goal scorer probabilities, top 10 captains, you name it. It'll all be covered, so you're all prepared for Game Week 9 and the rest of the season. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or find insightful, then like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date with my content, both FPL and UCL Fantasy, which I'll cover up until the end of the campaign. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships, for likes to my videos, prior to comments, amongst many other perks. My Discord server, the FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It also helps me out a lot, and I do appreciate all the support. I'll see you on Friday for the next deadline stream. There will be a reaction probably on the Saturday, and there's much more FPL and UCL Fantasy content to look forward to.